Joining me now to take a look at the Ford government's mini budget, as well as that other political newsmaker in Toronto, former PC leader Patrick Brown. I'm joined now by Robert Benzie, Queen's Park Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Thanks for joining us, Robert.
Hi, Martin.
I know this is a busy day, so we won't keep you too long because you are busy with the budget, or the mini budget. First of all, though, I'm looking at the headline, your headline in the Toronto Star of this budget. Ontario Tories cut taxes and oversight protections for the environment, for children, and for francophones. Is there anything that's maybe moving more in the opposite direction than the federal government?
Yeah, I mean, there is certainly, I guess you could say this is the anti-Trudeau kind of government now. I mean, they are the most prominent conservative government in the country. Doug Ford likes campaigning against Justin Trudeau, and Justin Trudeau seems to like campaigning against Doug Ford. And yes, this document, I think, could be seen as an against the Trudeau kind of agenda. This government has cut the Environment Commissioner, they've cut the French Language Commissioner, and they've cut the Child Advocate. These positions are being folded into other watchdogs. So now there will be only 9 watchdogs at Queen's Park, and there used to be, or it won't be 6, there used to be 9.
Okay, and they also have cut plans, I understand, for a Francophone college or university that was going to go?
University, yes.
Okay, so that's another cut.
And that's on top of 3 other university campuses that they previously cut in Brampton, Milton, and Markham outside Toronto.
Now, the deficit is still going to be quite substantial, more than $14 billion, and part of that is because of the lack of revenue from cutting the carbon tax, or cutting the cap-and-trade system. They've pulled out of Kathleen Wynne's cap-and-trade system. They're losing, what, more than $1.5 billion a year on that. Is there anything in the budget, because we had suggestions that they were actually going to be talking about campaigning against the carbon tax?
And they are going to be campaigning against the federal carbon tax that, of course, Ontario is now subject to, or will be subject to next year, because it doesn't have its own carbon pricing system anymore. Cap and trade had been in place for about a year and a bit with California and Quebec, and was bringing in almost $2 billion a year in revenue to the province. That's a big hit to the Treasury in a $150 billion a year budget. So, yeah, they're having to make amends for that. The budget deficit is, as you said, $14.5 billion. It was $15 billion, but they included a bunch of liberal spending promises when they were using the inflated number. But those aren't being spent. But revenue is down, so that's why the deficit is so big.
Now, this budget, though, has some measures that will be popular, no doubt. Cuts to taxes, especially for low-income earners. What kind of political calculation is that?
I think that was one of Mr. Ford's signature promises during the election campaign, that anyone who earns less than $30,000 a year won't pay income tax in the province, provincial income tax. They'll still have to pay other federal taxes and so on. But that's coming at the same time as the government is canceling a $1 an hour hike to the minimum wage. So people who earn around $30,000, that is pretty much the minimum wage. At $14 minimum wage, $28,000 would be a full-time job at minimum wage. It was supposed to go up to $15 in January, which would have made $30,000, I guess, for a full-time minimum wage earner, and that's now not going to happen. So it's, I guess, taking from with one hand and giving with the other.
Okay, I want to ask, because while we've got you on the line, I want to ask you about something else, though, and my question is it still reverberating? Yesterday, we saw Patrick Brown releasing his book. The book's called, what, Take Down the Attempted Political Assassination of Patrick Brown. Yesterday, all the headlines were about swipes that he was taking at Vic Fideli, the man who just delivered today's budget, or mini-budget. He alleges that he was the object of a complaint of sexual misconduct. He did not. Fideli denies that, so does the government. But he also takes swipes at Lisa MacLeod, now minister. Is that still going to be reverberating around the halls of Queen's Park, or is this budget going to completely eclipse that?
Well, at Mr. Fideli's press conference about an hour ago here at Queen's Park, he was asked repeatedly about Brown's allegations. He denies them. He said he has retained legal counsel and is taking what Patrick Brown said very seriously. I've read the book, Martin, and it is a score-settling, scorched earth book, and the Ford government is not happy about it. For whatever reason, they let it. It gave it a lot of oxygen last night by having Mr. Ford himself tweet about it and say it was full of lies. And and there's some very unkind things said about Lisa MacLeod, so they rallied behind that. So in a weird way, it's been a good thing for this Tory government because it's it's forced them to rally together against their former leader, but it's also distracted from what they wanted to be talking about today, which was the fall economic statement, this mini budget.
Do you think, though, that this mini budget and any ensuing either praise or debate that it causes might mean that the Patrick Brown book is a, I don't know, two-day wonder?
Well, I don't know. I'm told that the book's already #1 on Amazon in Canada, so I don't know if it's just a one-day wonder. Look, it's a painful book for the Conservatives. It's fresh wound being, a wound being reopened.
A settling of scores.
And a settling of scores. But the funny thing is, the strange thing, the surreal thing, is that so many people in the legislature today who are denouncing this book were this time last year, Martin, talking about Patrick Brown as the next Premier of Ontario and saying wonderful things about how lovely Patrick Brown was, and in fact, how lovely carbon pricing was, because of course, Mr. Brown was in favor of the carbon pricing plan of Mr. Trudeau, which made him quite different than most Conservatives in Canada.
Oh, well, always interesting times out of Toronto. I want to thank you. Thanks for speaking with us, Robert.
Thanks, Martin.